WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
WESN.
Welcome back. This is Talking Point on WESN, the Content Capital Show. Michael Small with you once again this morning as we approach Christmas, a time of celebration, joy, happiness, family, food, festivities, fun, and also now I guess it'll be just one of those things where, I mean, every now and then they have a few Christmas movies which some of us believe in our heart of hearts to be Christmas movies, but they're not necessarily the type of fun that we would normally associate with Christmas. You know, you have Gremlins, you have Die Hard, and now, you know, in real life, we have the Southern Caribbean. I don't know what else to say. This is one of those situations where the answer to the question, are you not entertained, is probably no, I am not entertained right now. One of the reasons is this whole situation has spilled over with regards to our potential domestic civilian life. I'm not necessarily sure why they will be doing this, but there's a report from the New York Times. I find this interesting that our newspapers are reporting on a report from the New York Times, which is then reporting on something that happened here. So the New York Times has technically, apparently scooped our local media. But there's a report apparently in the New York Times where navigation systems, GPS systems are being jammed. I'm not entirely sure if this is a by the way thing with regards to jamming multiple frequencies while the Americans are operating in certain parts of the Southern Caribbean's airspace, including ours, or if it is an attempt to perhaps limit the usage of GPS by the Venezuelans. Now, in the past, I do believe it might have been a lot easier for the Americans to interfere with GPS because I believe theirs was the first system, but now there are multiple different systems from multiple different nations, I believe including Russia, China, India, maybe more than one European system. So, for whatever reason, now there are reports of interference. Now, the pilots apparently, the airline has come out to say that there is no jamming. The pilots are saying there's jamming, but that's not really a safety concern because they still have, and I would hope that they are still proficient with, the other traditional navigational tools which are perfectly safe. It just might be less efficient with regards to time, less efficient with regards to fuel costs. How long this goes on could impact Carl's bottom line, depending. Now, the example given was traveling to New York, which I don't expect GPS jamming will occur all that way. Right now, it might be more of an issue where it is bothering our air bridge for one, and I don't know to what extent that's going to impact things like, because the trip is so short, fuel efficiency, and in part because navigation will be less efficient, right? But there was a situation where apparently a pilot from Caribbean Airlines told air traffic controller the system was being jammed and needed guidance into the airport. This is one of those things where over-reliance of automated systems at times, You never know what the emergency could be. So this is one of those lessons of don't be reliant just on technology, and always have backups and be proficient with the backups. But then, going back to my initial observation when reading the story, I find it very interesting that the New York Times would scoop our local media houses for this story. Now, that said, there's another concern with regards to this whole situation, and that is apparently US aircraft are operating without their transponders on, which, let's be frank, they are maybe one step shy of it being a war zone at this point, which is not something that any Trimegonian would want to hear. So on some level, I understand they're not here on exercises, they're not here on patrols, they're here conducting operations, and I understand that they don't want their transponders on. The problem is, apparently, US military did tell civilian air traffic control in the area, right, that they would be responsible for traffic. They would be in communication. But local air traffic control and pilots are complaining that that's not the case, and they are worried about a mid-air collision. So the retired Director General of Civil Aviation, Ramesh Lakshminiyal, he says that the US would not do anything to jeopardize aviation safety globally, which generally speaking is a statement that I believe to be true. Unfortunately, one of my issues with this whole situation is, if the FAA was in charge of this whole operation, sure, they're not. If the NTSB was in charge of this whole operation, sure, they're not. The problem is we have military officers who may or may not have the prerequisite experience in conducting operations like this. Because think about it. When's the last time they did anything like this? The war on terror was primarily the other branches of service, the Army and the Air Force. They're conducting a blockade where they do have to now find sanctioned tankers versus unsanctioned tankers and operate aircraft in the midst of civilian aircraft. And this is not a war, this is not Afghanistan, this is not Iraq, this is not an active war zone, right? And on some level, those regions may be a bit more used to, all right, this is how we deal with these situations, as opposed to us that has no experience whatsoever in things like this. Because it's not just happening in the Southern Caribbean, it is happening in proximity to, if not on top of, Trinidad and Tobago. So that's a significant concern, right? To me at least. To what extent or how far is it going to go, I don't know. But at the end of the day, while on some level, yes, the commander of the US Naval Task Force may very well be a pilot. Usually that's how it goes. A pilot gets promoted from the commander of the air group. He becomes the captain of the carrier after getting on extra training, then gets promoted to admiral, then he gets in charge of the entire carrier battle group. But the commander of the amphibious ready group with the Marines do believe that he is not necessarily going to be a pilot. Regardless, understanding military naval aviation and understanding deconflicting with civilian aviation that is active, and it's not a conflict zone where you could just wave them off, at least not yet, where you could just wave them off and demand that they go where you tell them to go. They haven't started to do that yet. They need to figure it out. Accidents can happen when you get into situations that are in between the margins. And you don't necessarily, it seems, according to the people on our side, it seems as though they are not putting the effort to deconflict the situation. Now, that could be with regards to operational security. Regardless, I don't care if pilots are concerned about mid-air collisions because they have at times had US military planes in close enough proximity to make them nervous, or rather, in close enough proximity while not having any information given to them to ensure they avoid mid-air collision. This is one of those things where, you know, if a mistake is made, you can't just say oops and move on. Because depending on the severity of the mistake, the consequences will be somewhat permanent, if you know what I mean. Now, not to harp on this too long, there's other stuff about the whole situation that I've yet to get to for the week. There's big running commentary with regards to, again, CARICOM, the Prime Minister's stance, and what it means, and the whole politics of the situation, which might be a projection or a continuation or an extension of our local politics, but we'll get to that in a minute when we welcome our guest for the morning. One of the things I wanted to point out is former PSA President Jennifer Batiste-Primus, and yes, you should, for context, she is a member of the PNM, right? Although to be fair, she is that member of the PNM that looked at all the shenanigans that were going on with the attempt to have Stuart Young be the successor to Dr. Keith Rowley. She looked at that whole situation and she was one of the lone voices that was trying to say, hey, maybe this thing ain't so kosher. Explain thyself or fall on thy sword. And they decided to fall on their sword in our election. It is what it is. But she's now waiting on the PSA situation, basically telling the current president, Felicia Thomas, silence is not an option. Apparently, Guardian Media is claiming that they have been unable to contact her for nearly 3 weeks while the whole situation with the PSA back pay has continued, which I find interesting because at the end of the day, this is one of those situations where, and to be fair, this is a political failing. This is a failure or a mistake that many politicians make. They get away with it because we're small and on some level they have a little bit of a monopoly on certain issues or sources of information, right? We don't have a lot of people willing to speak out, speak any kind of truth to power. So, not that I care for that phrase, but I do find it apt in this situation. So, in that regard, the PSA president was more than happy when it suited her to speak to the media, to have the camera's attention, to go on political platforms and campaign. She did not campaign for the UNC, let's be frank, she campaigned for the 10%. That's what she campaigned for. And now that the situation has gotten more complicated, because as I said from the very beginning, the interest of the government and the state, well, first of all, the interest of the government and the nation of Trinidad and Tobago, they're supposed to be aligned, but at times you question if they are aligned. But then on top of that complexity, right, is the fact that the interests of unions will just about be guaranteed to not be aligned with the interests of the state. Because at the end of the day, the interest of the state was not to pay 10% and to have $3.8 billion in extra debt this year. That was the interest of the state, right? The interest of the union was to get their back pay. The interest of the government was to keep the political promise that was made, or at least to have the veneer of keeping the political promise made, while trying as much as possible to limit the economic damage. Actually achieving both of those things at the same time is seemingly near impossible, but hey, that was technically in their interest. So now we have what we have, where according to our media house, President of the PSA ain't talking much, which just goes to show me that she's more of a politician than a union leader. She was a lobbyist, not necessarily in the sense of this is what's best for the union, but a lobbyist in the sense of when corn farmers want to sell fructose corn syrup in multiple products and the government and get the US FDA to approval, they lobby the government. When various economic agendas, labor agendas want to go through regardless of what it means to the wider picture, lobbyists. We'll see in the long run if the PSA situation and WASA situation is a secure one with a good working environment and a healthy entity that is highly productive and something that the nation can be proud of. Somehow I doubt the latter very much. But hey, greed is a hell of a drug apparently. Because meanwhile, not only is the PSA getting back pay, apparently TSTT has a wonderful new deal for Public Service Association members, an exclusive affinity plan. Members now access the convenient set bundles that combine mobile, broadband, internet, TV, landline, and home security services at discounted rates. I wonder if this might be part of the deal, or maybe some sort of incentive to try to get them to step off on the full cashback pay story. Regardless, the bundles are designed to support members at different stages of life, including young officers, families, home-based workers, smaller. That's nice. I just would like to know exactly why is what seems to be currently, relatively speaking, by percentage, one of, if not the best paid subsection of the public service sector, getting an exclusive discounted deal. Because TSTT is making money hand over fist, right? But what about the rest of us? What about the rest of the public servants, like the Fire Service Association, the TTPS Social and Welfare Association, right? The Prison Officers Association. What about the other healthcare workers, the ones? What about the teachers? And so on and so on. Just pick a union, right? Hell, what about the pilots? Technically, CAL is owned by the state. How much goodies are you going to give this one union? Oh, by the way, the president, Felicia Thomas, this was announced in a news release on December 25th. All right, let me not go there. So, yeah, this is cute. I want to know, is this part of the promises made, politics kept by Minister of Finance Tanku? Tell me, what about all the ministry workers? What about them to get... Listen, on some level, to be fair, while I did complain that the teachers were basically saying, oh, wait, there's a pandemic, so it's not safe for us to go out. But since you all are making us work from home, you'll have to pay for it. While on some level, I disagreed with that then, because that was clearly much a greedy money grab. And we might hear similar things from Tutor in the coming weeks, months, years, right? I will say this though. Teachers have a lot of responsibilities on their plate. At times, the ministry is not allocating enough financial resources to the schools. So what could help for the teachers that actually do work, because there are a lot of public teachers that do work hard. Again, someone has to keep the system going, right? It hasn't totally collapsed yet. There are good public service teachers. Maybe they could make use of a bundle, because I would imagine things like a lot of research on the internet, maybe extra lessons, consultations, or just channels of communication between the students, parents, and the like might be useful. I don't know. I could be wrong. But yeah, look, apparently, if you thought there were ghost gangs in CPEP and URP, well, I wonder, when will we have similar concerns, if we haven't had already, because some of us do, with regards to WASA? Because CPEP was considered, the narrative was, it was an institution of dependency for the PNM. I wonder what way the PSA workers will vote for the next 2 to 3 elections unless something goes wrong. Let's not forget, Felicia Thomas is, for all intents and purposes, the president because the position was vacated by Leroy Batiste. I wonder where he is now. Oh wait, he's a cabinet minister. Isn't that convenient? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll realign our perspectives and refocus on what's going on in the Caribbean region. Stay tuned. This is Talking About WSN. We'll be right back after this.
What's good? It's your boy Just JSTT's most dangerous DJ, Trinity technician in the building, and QRC old boy, QRC salute. Listen, the free car raffle is on. There's a new date, January 24th, 2026. January 24th, free cars up for grabs, $100 a ticket. Tavern. Alright? So get them tickets now. 3 cars, brand new. 1 could be yours. All 3 could be yours. Get the tickets. Just yourself. Big up QRC. 3-car raffle. January 24, the new date. So
By public demand, the draw date for the 3-car raffle presented on behalf of Queens Royal College is now extended to Saturday, January 24, 2026.
First prize is a luxurious, fully loaded Royal Ride Ford Ranger.
New draw date, Saturday, January 24th.
Tickets only $100.
All tickets already purchased remain valid, and additional tickets at $100 are still available at
IslandEtickets.com.
Legends Sports Bar, Point Fortin,
6 Lickermont Bonds Road.
Mileage Mac, Porter's Bean, and San Fernando.
Fifth Street Market, Aripid Avenue.
Mepco, Maraval.
Tony's Hardware, Belmont.
Shane's Supermarket, Aruka.
Hot Shop, Mukurapa Road.
St. James Pharmacy, opposite the Police Barrack.
Icebox, Riverside Road, Turap.
Davide Discount Hardware, both outlets.
Color Shop, Diggle Mountain and St. James.
Juma Supermarket, Valencia.
MS Food City, Tebe.
Mirage Supermarket, Paget Main Road. The deadline for ticket purchase is Monday, 19th January. Get your tickets now.
For more info, call the college at 622-1671 or the hotline at 491-1802.
It's Christmas time, and with your family you'll spend every evening watching a movie on WESN. The classics that fill your heart with merriment and cheer as we celebrate together the most wonderful time of the year.
This is my island in December.
This Christmas, WESN celebrates with you as the content capital brings the big screen classics. Gather your family and tune in to WESN from December 1st to 31st at 8 p.m. nightly for We Christmas Movie Classics.
Santa's coming to town. Santa! Oh my God! Santa here? I know him. I know him.
Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Maybe he landed here totally by coincidence. But if by chance he's admiring your fresh coat of Benjamin Moore soft sky blue, well, that's a pretty high compliment. Coming from an expert.
So once your sugar is not controlled, it causes changes in the blood vessels in the back of your eyes. It basically makes your blood vessels more leaky. And it happens on a stage process where the smaller molecules start to leak, then the intermediate, and then the larger ones. Larger means we have come to a bleed.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movietown, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not to do with that.
I find that was a distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of this game.
no.
Let's go to the last part.
I'm back here talking about the WSND Connect Capital Show. Michael Small joined because we're not going to have a chance to talk to him on Friday. And given the situation, oh boy, more than ever, I never thought that national security concerns will run so deep in this country because, again, the situation is unprecedented. So we have with us, not on his usual day, on a Tuesday, Ashraf Ali, disaster management expert, former member of the TTPS, or somewhat soon to be retired member of the TTPS, and someone who has functioned with regards to large scale event coordination and management. Ashraf?
Morning, Sean, and it's nice to be here again. How's the weather treating you?
I mean, the weather is great. It was a little too warm this morning.
Too warm?
Yeah, too warm.
Is it because of the radar in Tobago?
No, I'm pretty sure. No.
Everything seems to be about
Everything seems to be
about the radar in Tobago.
I just because Ashraf said a couple of things because he saw some industry quality. One, no, the radar's not causing any jamming, right? Two, the point I was trying to make was I could see where things like air traffic control would slip through the cracks with regards to deconflicting civilian traffic and military traffic, right? So again, as I said, I don't necessarily know why they're jamming. It seems that they are jamming. It is what it is.
Just remember, in Trinidad and Tobago, we just be jamming on a regular basis.
Different kind of jam.
Exactly. So why not jamming? Everybody come in.
I guess, the Americans jamming still.
They're jamming still.
Wow.
But the reality of it, remember, our airports, based on our aviation laws, are no-fly zones. Right, so flying drones in certain areas, they would have technology that would cause interruptions with flying of drones. Whether or not we could correlate that, whether that could be correlated.
I suspect that that's mostly software on the drone side, because I know that exists. Because if we have anti-drone jamming devices by the airports that apparently potentially works, the next question people will have is, well, how them prisons getting drones flown into them left, right, and center?
So this situation just brings more question to bear, because if it's possible at the airport, it should be possible at the prison infrastructure. Also, has there ever been any incident reported where planes or aircrafts that are coming into our airspace, local or otherwise, got into it has some issues with respect to their instrumental devices, and we are not aware of it?
I now realized, right? Yes, because there are other things that could disrupt GPS, but apparently it's a growing concern that this is happening in conflict zones.
So you see, we have to be careful and not just throwing everything in the same pot with the radar.
Now, the other thing is this, I did think what could be a reason why is allegedly, according to the Minister of Defense, they are illegal planes, right?
Yes.
Which makes sense. They're illegal boats, they'll be illegal planes.
They
right?
are illegal.
So they can't contact air traffic control. So if you disrupt their GPS, it might make their drops, it might make their operations more difficult.
And this just brings a wider conversation as to what may or may not have been occurring, possible little incidents or that has not been made to general public. Because if an incident outside of this nature took place with respect to some issues with the technology on the planes, it would have caused some issues, some challenges or some concerns with a number of persons flying those airplanes. It would not have been a good thing for not only tourism, but a lot of concerns with respect to that.
My thing is, because as one pilot said, and I said the sentiment, I didn't attribute it to one of the pilots interviewed, the GPS thing is less of a concern to me. It's more about the potential issues where you have military aircraft that the civilian traffic is unaware of, and the civilian traffic generally tends to operate on fixed routes, so they're not going to be like, oh, well, to avoid military traffic, I will just decide to fly on this course at this altitude, whatever.
Exactly, and we have encounters, sorry, not encounters, we have reports, even in the United States, where military planes.
Well, there was a helicopter crash.
Right, where in commercial airspaces.
Although there's a big political brouhaha over the pilot and the decisions that she did or did not make.
Fair enough,
right?
That's why America did with, but it highlights the issue of authorized and unauthorized planes or aircrafts in specific zones.
Now,
so that is a risk that we encounter right now.
Now, the big story, however, that to me is not the big story. The big story is the situation, the continuation of the Prime Minister's association, dialogue, engagement with CARICOM. Because now she has, this is the thing, she has come out to have more critique on CARICOM as an institution, calling it an unreliable partner, dysfunctional and self-destructive. This is a situation where on the basic premise, I actually don't disagree with her, in part because show me any collection of nations, any alliance of nations, right, that do not have intrinsically or naturally aligned agendas, and I will show you a super political body or an international body that's going to have, you know, issues, right? The EU, at times, maybe the G7, or they don't necessarily hear it as much, the UN. Why is CARICOM any different? And so naturally, there's going to be difficulties with any kind of regional body. So it's not necessarily just because the Caribbean leaders are, well, they just have bad intentions and are just bad. But the basic premise, right, it's not easy to get multiple countries to agree. The basic premise that, hey, is it reliable, right? Is it dysfunctional? I don't necessarily mind the direction. However, I do wonder if the Prime Minister is being too aggressive in this sort of thing. And maybe it is because, as Ashraf, you pointed out off air before we came back from the break, the situation is one where people are criticizing her in an aggressive manner. So she is kind of, on some level, firing back. Because even Venezuela, it's not looking to criticize the Americans, they're criticizing the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is one of the situations where we'll say this time and time again. In what world did Trump wait for Kamala's permission to do whatever it is he's doing in the Southern Caribbean, right? Yes, you can see the radar, but the radar in Tobago is like one minor aspect that is not technically necessary because they have ships with radars and planes with radars. They didn't absolutely need the radar deployed in Tobago. It's just useful. It's more convenient, perhaps, right? So to say that our support is such a big deal in what's going on, I think overestimates our importance. And maybe that is at times a sin that Trinbagonians, like anyone else, wants to make. You overestimate your own importance in a situation.
Well, I believe we overestimate because we believe Trinidad and Tobago was the big brother of the Caribbean in terms of CARICOM, because we're more financially sound over the last number of years. We had more, as I say, Trinidad and Tobago had more than the rest of Caribbean countries, right? And this, I don't think this is true with CARICOM and the current environment with CARICOM started now. It has been brewing, because there was a lot of skeptics in terms of what does CARICOM do for the other countries. How do we share? How do we help our brothers build towards sustainable economy and help develop CARICOM countries on the whole? Is it that Trinidad and Tobago alone should be doing that because why? We may be deemed the one that, or consider the one that has much more finances and are better off than the rest? Right? It can be argued from other elements. Look at what is taking place with our currency. Trinidad and Tobago dollars cannot be utilized of the Caribbean.
Yes.
Right? That is something significant for Trinidadians when they had to visit other Caribbean countries. I've always said that if I'm for CARICOM should not only be for trade and trade and business and job opportunities, but for leisure and for travel between the Caribbean countries, and you could be able to enjoy what CARICOM has. Could you go up the Caribbean as another Caribbean country and we consider as a tourist? You'll be paying tourist price. But we are from the CARICOM. We are CARICOM, and we are not treated as persons from CARICOM. We have no benefits in terms of discounted prices or to encourage CARICOM countries to visit each other. You pay the full brunt of the price, right? You have to trade it with US dollars. You have to get EC, or you have to get pounds when you go to these countries. How it is benefiting?
Which is crazy, because they buy stuff from us. So one would think if there was any situation where we could trade in our own currencies amongst ourselves, and because it's hard to say, well, America, can we buy your stuff with our currency, right? I mean, they do also buy stuff from us, and maybe it might be possible, but on some level, it might just be more simpler if we could, essentially conduct a financial exchange rate transaction with their banks, right? But with regards to the Eastern Caribbean, it is weird, but I do suspect, however, that we also would want foreign currency for the stuff that we export to them.
And I agree.
So it kind of, both sides are restricting that.
There must be a balance. So yes, on one side you can say we depend on the Caribbean countries, because yes, we export a lot of items from up the Eastern Caribbean, as well as we do sell some of the Eastern Caribbean items here, part of CARICOM agreement. So I am not saying that we throw ourselves out of CARICOM, because it is not a feasible option. That's not a feasible option, but they must have some level of balance with respect to it. It cannot be that that our Prime Minister continues to be chastised by making a decision in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. You may not have to agree with the decision that person is making, but it is making it in the interest of Trinidad and Tobago. Even our citizens are saying otherwise, and I'm comfortable with persons who are not satisfied, who not satisfied with what the decisions that she's making, and who supporting some of the decisions that she's making. But at the end of the day, like we continue to say, our decisions, or the decisions of the United States in this situation with Venezuela, is not dependent on what Trinidad and Tobago say or do.
Well, also because there were multiple criticisms of the current set of statements, right? I won't get into the Prime Minister of Antigua specifically just yet, although we did kind of touch upon that issue. But I wanted to start with Dr. Rowley. This is the first article that I saw over the weekend, and I had a thought, because he's saying, this stance, that is to say, the withdrawal from CARICOM matters and decisions places the country in a position he characterized as dangerous, right? Which, all right, if you look at the trade, if we were to just lose that for no reason, that could be detrimental. However, he suggested that this stance is motivated by expectations of protection or reward from the United States. And I think this is a situation where, because there are a lot of people who are looking at various other international entities and alignments, whether it's economic alliances or military alliances, and you're watching the whole world kind of shift. Because before COVID, it was, yeah, we all do business with each other, the global village, we all make money. Everybody making money. Everybody making money. I think the richest per capita the world has been, I could be wrong, but it seemed as though even areas of poverty, the per capita GDP was rising, the level of wealth around the world was rising, and it was essentially, financially, the best time to be a human anywhere. Then COVID happened and it disrupted a lot of global trade, and now people are realigning. We have not necessarily shifted back to pre-pandemic consumer patterns, so that's caused a lot of other issues, right? Which you might underestimate, but it grows into a big thing. And because of that, I do wonder if some of the people in CARICOM, as well as some people like Dr. Rowley, they're operating in the framework, because even just after COVID, everybody was still kind of acting as though the relationships were pre-COVID. But when Russia attacked Ukraine, all of a sudden now, that was a big stone in the whole idea of, well, trade will encourage peace. And then Russia said, no, no peace, war. And Europe basically got caught with their pants down. I believe the former German Chancellor Angela Merkel kind of got a lot of egg on her face because she was pushing a more peaceful agenda of Europe. And whether you like it or not, Trump was right about Europe not taking on their fair share of European defense, because America is not only chopping block when it comes to what happens in Eastern Europe, right?
So true.
So I do wonder if a lot of the Caribbean regional leaders and Dr. Rowley, they are looking at what was, where you be more neutral, you know, you can engage with China and you can engage with America, and you don't necessarily have to commit to a side. Whereas now, as others have pointed out, it might be that, listen, everyone is drawing lines.
And
with or without us, they are drawing lines. And America drawing lines is not necessarily a Trump thing, because I believe Europe is now looking at their trade deficit with China and saying, hey, this can't necessarily continue and persist, you know, for any lengthy period of time. We don't like how this is looking. So, and I believe Mexico also has tariffs with China as well. So people are drawing lines, and the question is the Prime Minister potentially correctly assessing the situation and saying, hey, you know, America's our biggest trade partner. You know, we depend on them for food security and physical security. Maybe it's not about abandoning CARICOM for America. Maybe it's about prioritizing the more important relationship, and unfortunately, CARICOM doesn't see it that way.
And U.S. Southcom has been in the Caribbean for years. They have provided trading and a lot of assets and other resources to the Caribbean country, to our Caribbean countries. So it's not unique. That bilateral agreement has been there for years. Are you saying that based on our current Venezuela and the United States current situation, we need to throw that out the door and say, listen, no, I'm not saying that. I'm just throwing it out. I'm throwing it out. Are we saying that we need to just throw that out the door and tell the United States, well, after everything that you have provided for us and given us throughout the years, we're not in agreement with what you're doing there, so here we're going on. We're not going to allow certain things to happen in Trinidad and Tobago, and CARICOM say we're not doing it. No, listen, you don't need United States permission. Let us be clear. We do not need the U.S. permission. I don't know anybody in the Caribbean.
Is it that we don't need their permission, or we don't grant them permission to anything?
No, we don't need their permission.
Okay.
They are acting within their jurisdiction, their scope. They requested permission to utilize, to put a radar, which was acknowledged and accepted by some controversial ways in terms of how it happened, right? Person could say otherwise, but at the end of the day, the radar is here. The support mechanism to utilize the radar is also here, right? If the radar wasn't here, as you continue to say, if it wasn't placed in Trinidad and Tobago, it is not necessary for here alone. And it was used, it has been stated it was used for narco trafficking. And questionable.
Yeah.
Questionable. But if you put a device for one purpose and it has multi-layered function,
yes,
are you telling me that we get rid of the multi-layer functions?
What I'm saying is, if we have the model correct, is not only is it for air surveillance, but tracking of targets, air traffic control, and they basically took 4 mobile radars and combined them in one.
So then, Sean...
Because just to shoot down a plane technically has 2 radar systems.
So then why utilize an equipment,
I don't limit it to one.
Which only, that you said, I only want one limited scope with it.
Well, hold on. Before we get there, because I just want to get through the whole CARICOM and the politics, because I'll just throw this out there. Our national biases, it does appear as though it's being played out in our international relations, right? Just a little bit. So that question is now always on the back of my mind if we look at who is with the current Trinidad and Tobago government and who is not, and who was against the PNM government and who was not, right? But one of the things that Prime Minister Gaston Brown said, and let's go to that. The U.S. basically said, hey, we're gonna blank you with visas. Now, from what I understand, the issue that the U.S. has, and this is not too dissimilar to the issue the United Kingdom had with the EU, because their immigration laws were tied to the EU. They could not blank anyone coming from an EU state while in the EU, right? So a lot of the British politicians said, time out. You see all of them issues you'll have with the volume of refugees you took and did not account for and had no plans for, and you basically left the situation to depreciate and turn into a bad situation. We don't want any more of that here, so we're going to go our own way. And I think America is basically saying the same thing, because the 2 Caribbean nations, Haiti is the 3rd, but the 2 that they listed in this current crop, they have citizenship by investment programs. And the problem with that is it's very easy for a bad actor, because it's not, you can pay a lump sum, but you could also buy real estate or buy a business, and you get through with citizenship by investment. Yes. And then now, they essentially get the same sort of considerations that any Antiguan or Barbudan would get, but they could be from somewhere where the Americans are like, we already wanted to keep that subset out for whatever reason, whether rightfully or wrongfully.
So true.
So you're putting your vulnerability to our immigration system. We don't want to have to deal with that. So it could be, because immigration in America was an issue from before, it could actually be that this situation might have happened regardless of the whole CARICOM U.S. zone of peace talk anyway. That is technically potentially on the table. Or it could be that CARICOM stands, it just made something that the Americans wanted to do more enticing.
So that is the situation. We may not have, we do not know what is the rollout plan of the United States immigration agenda in terms of what they're going to happen. They are dealing with it as we see it is unfolding, right? Yes, that could have been on their agenda to treat with these 2 CARICOM countries in that manner in an appropriate time. They may consider this is the appropriate time now. They may say that this is the appropriate time. Yeah. It just means that it just only adds to the fuel of the current situation that United States, Venezuela, and the situation is that Trinidad and Tobago is the one who encouraged it, who caused that to happen. Come on.
I mean, because this is the thing, Ralph Gonsalves lost his election, while I will say on principle what the minister in the ministry said ran the risk of interfering. I don't think it was the reason, but on principle he shouldn't have done it, but I don't think it was the reason why Ralph Gonsalves lost that election. But the point is, that's one Caribbean head of state that was calling for a zone of peace that had a negative consequence, and now 2 other Caribbean nations had this happen to them. It does make me wonder To what extent will the political narrative continue to be maintained, or if this will harm it? Because remember I said, I think the Prime Minister might be prioritizing what she views as the more important relationship. I do, however, question, because this is what Prime Minister Brown said, equally no member should question the legitimacy of another CARICOM state engaging responsibly, transparently, and respectfully with international partners, including the U.S., on matters that directly affect its citizens. Now, we could assess the veracity of their position on if it's responsible or transparent separately. On some level, while I have no issue with the Prime Minister disagreeing with CARICOM, I just don't know if I care for it to be as combative as it is on her end, regardless of how they communicate. Because I think at some point you have to take the high road and say, listen, I'm not going to wade down in the weeds with the bacchanal back and forth with everybody else. And I'll get to why I say it's weeds after, if you want to respond to that.
No, like we continue to say, once it is said, you can't pull it back. It was already said, right? You can retract a statement, but the statement was already made. Right? So yes, sometimes some of the conversation, some of the reactions, some of the responses might be a bit combative. It may sound a little too you're attacking or has to give a particular type of response based on a certain amount of certain type of remark. Unfortunately, everything that is happening and all these incidents, why, if the United States stops or started deal with you with respective visas, why are you not treating with the United States? Call out the United States, why? Why are we talking about Trinidad and Tobago? Trinidad and Tobago has
Venezuela is the same thing.
Trinidad and Tobago has no issue, has no authority in your foreign policy.
Somehow we're the power behind the throne, right? You know,
all of a
our
sudden,
Prime Minister called the White House said, hey, get rid of them visas for them people. You
understand? And I may not agree with some of these statements that the Prime Minister make, but let us be realistic. When you go on social media and that type of comments I think I see on social media where people talking about, oh, I don't need a US visa, I don't need this and I don't need that. Let us be realistic. Nobody's going to hand up the US visa just so easy. The rigid measures that you have to go through the US visa with the possibility of not being successful, right? Because there's no guarantee. When you do get, are you not going to safeguard that because it is a cumbersome process? At some point in time, you may want to visit the United States, or you may need a US visa to go to some other area. Are you going to say that, listen to me, I don't agree with a government, a Prime Minister's position, so I'm going to give up my visa? Let us be realistic. Who's going to do that?
Now, I do think, though, that it's not like a complete blanket ban, but I can't remember the specifics on what happened to those nations.
Exactly. So there are restrictions, there are certain limitations to certain number of visas. It will impact a vast a number of individuals from businesses to persons who are going to vacation, even from an educational perspective, because persons will need visas to study in some areas. So they would be in a situation, but I am simply saying that is a conversation for them and between the U.S. government. No. Everything can be Trinidad and Tobago fault.
Now, the thing is, and I have issues with the term zone of peace, because I think people kind of use it in a very unrealistic, idealistic way, in the sense of, peace is nice. You know what? We're a society of law and order. I mean, we're supposed to be, right? Now, in practice, are we? So why?
I like where you're going. I like where your conversation is respected that big. We're talking zone of peace. Zone of peace with respect to what? Wars on the seas, wars with other countries. That alone is not the zone of peace. We have a high crime rate. We have narco trafficking in Trinidad and Tobago. We have, and we have been struggling with a high crime rate for a number of years. Thank Lord, we in a position only because we have state of emergencies dealing with it.
But my main thing is this. We are supposed to be a society of law and order, but as many callers have pointed out, we are not. Why? Because we have an issue obeying the laws, in part because of enforcement, right? In part because the law breaking is so widespread, the TTP, yes, okay, you could say, you know, the TTPS has to handle murders and stuff, but as you point out, if the police started enforcing every single law in the books, people have issues with it.
And then,
right?
So in Jamaica had a high crime rate. It's more kind of, I should say for them, more reasonable right now in terms of,
it's still kind
of high, but more reasonable for them in comparison to what they have. Is it okay for have violence within your society, so then we don't have a zone of peace anymore?
But more importantly, I think people need to understand something. Peace is not our default state. This extended period of peace is not the norm for human history. Peace is reliant on someone defending that peace, because there will always be those, and if you did not have someone to defend the peace of the Caribbean, which is first the United States, second maybe the United Kingdom, third maybe France, right? The point is, notice none of those countries are Caribbean countries.
Nope, it is not.
So it's a zone of peace enforced by others. Why? Because history has shown nations like Venezuela, if there was nothing to curtail their aggression, will eventually, maybe not with Maduro, but somebody will decide, hey, you know what's better than having one country? Having two countries. You know what's better than having two countries?
Three countries.
Having three countries. Hey, I wonder what two countries besides Venezuela itself maybe Venezuela might be looking at. And this is one of the areas where, while I can't necessarily agree with the tone at all times of the Prime Minister, when she says CARICOM is a reliable partner, I basically was saying that over the Guyanese issue with Essequibo, you know, what, last year?
Yes.
However long ago that was, that's point number one. But point number two, who is enforcing this zone of peace? Because one of my issues, and this is not a reason to say America should intervene in Venezuela, but it's a lazy argument in the sense of we're a zone of peace. People of Venezuela should handle their issues themselves.
So I would have...
Right? I would like to know, Grenada, were you capable of handling your issue yourself back in '83? Please tell me.
So
because essentially when people say, let the people of Venezuela handle their issues themselves, they are basically saying, I know nothing of what's going on the ground because I cannot deconflict from the reports that Maduro is basically propped up by a military, stole the last election, used the military to break up large-scale protests over the announced results. How are the civilians of Venezuela and the people of Venezuela supposed to deal with that themselves?
No. I want somebody to anybody could say otherwise. If United States in the Southern Caribbean, Southcom does not come or put any assets in our area, let's put them out of the area for now. Any one of the Caribbean countries is capable enough to come to Trinidad and Tobago to assist us with narco trafficking.
They said, Gaston Brown said, we were aligned, or I can't remember the phrase he made, I don't know if I can find it, but he basically says, in fact, we were on the side of TNT with regards to combating crime, and I'm like, how? What?
What assets have you brought to assist our coastal or border control? If you are saying, because narcotics is not coming to Trinidad alone, it may come through Trinidad and head up to the Southern Caribbean.
Yeah, but you never hear about drug busts with regards to the help of CARICOM police forces. Do we hear drug busts with the help of American law enforcement
do we have a CARICOM
security
not
team? Really, no.
So then, so let us be realistic. At the end of the day, I am telling you, my whole neighborhood is telling me, we coming to help you. We have your back. We have your support, right? But time to have nightly patrol. No, we don't have.
No.
We don't have.
No. So we spoke about this with Inspector Calendar yesterday. You take out your air horn, someone breaking into your house. You dial 999. You're blasting your air horn because even if the police come right away, they ain't coming immediately, right? So you want the help of your community. You blasting your air horn. Meanwhile, you kind of watching through your window. Everybody else shutter their windows because they want no part of what's going on with you. You're on your own.
Exactly. But we have a community we have a community to assist.
Now here's the thing. I believe technically, I don't know how true this is. I just saw this recently. You need something like 1,000 deaths in a year or something like that for it to be like labeled as a war zone or whatever, right? So all right, it's a civilian crime situation. It's a civilian crime situation. But we're a zone of peace.
How much deaths we have?
The thing is, though, the crime situation is coming from a military dictatorship that is already in control of a country that's destabilized. Now tell me, is that a domestic crime situation? Does that sound like a domestic crime situation to you?
Well, let's see.
So I get it. Our crime deaths are not necessarily that high compared to our active war zone, number one. Number two, it is technically crime and not war. But part of the source of the violence, especially the more reckless, callous mentality, is from a situation where you have a military dictator right next door that is saying threatening language to at least the other neighbor, if not directly to us. They are saying things towards our prime minister, which it doesn't matter if you're a UNC member or PNM member, if you like the prime minister, if you don't like the prime minister. You should not tolerate or turn a blind eye to anyone insulting anybody in our government from the outside. That's just, you know, is there any national pride? I'm sorry, technically she is our prime minister.
Whether we like
it, the whole situation is, if she fails, we all fail, right? There are times when the election is over, whether you like it or not, because if the PNM won, you would want to say the same thing to UNC supporters. Let's get that straight.
Yeah.
So this is an international situation that we can't control. Right?
We don't have control.
CARICOM is not necessarily, because they themselves do not explain how the status quo is fine, why the status quo is fine, how Venezuela as a nation is supposed to deal with having a military dictator and how they could supposedly deal with it themselves. They're not giving us any of those help files. They're just saying, oh, well, you know, it's raining, so you should get out of the rain.
Nor do we
without telling us, where's the shelter?
Nor do we have any indication as to how you intend to assist in providing border security, because there's no indication how you intend to assist.
Because notice the lack of details. If CARICOM did that, if CARICOM said, well, Trinidad, listen, we will come together and help your maritime situation. The fact of the matter is they can't. That's why they're dependent on the US for so much. Or in the case of the Commonwealth nations, somewhat dependent on the UK, or in the case of the French Caribbean, somewhat dependent on France, right? But at the end of the day, regardless, France and England are all the way up to the Northeast Atlantic. The United States is right there. So we all still rely on the US on some level. So it is what it is, right? There's more to the commentary, but I think we need to go to the base. We need to talk about the base. The base, yeah.
So-called base.
The so-called base, right? I will just say this. I won't comment on it yet, but Justice C. Prasad brings up something that I think is very, well, I'll just leave this for you to comment. We won't go into everything he said. But he cautioned against premature judgments on recent geopolitical developments, noting that state sovereignty carries both authority and responsibility to act in the best interest of citizens, including through difficult decisions and strategic alliances. And he was...
But he sounded like a UNC.
The legality of those actions remains speculative.
He sounded like a UNC.
You think so?
So because of his statement, somebody could say he sounded like a UNC, right?
But I think
but he's given facts.
Here's the issue. People are gonna read, oh, he's defending the government. I read it as he's saying, don't assume.
Exactly.
Because as a judge, I keep saying, I understand that it looks bad with the airstrikes. I understand that it looks bad with the violating sovereign airspace and whatsoever. A judge still has to tell me how legal this is or not the court of public opinion.
And that is a challenge. That is saying you're a lot of information that is being dissected, analyzed, and judgments are being made in the court of public opinion.
Without full information.
Without.
And the thing is, Justice Prasad is not giving a judicial conclusion.
No, he's just
saying caution.
Yes.
Wait.
And I agree. When you read his statement, his comments there, it tells you have to be very careful in how you do your assessment and how you make your judgment. Without if you don't have all the information, you cannot make a proper assessment. And we keep making assessment. No, somebody will say, well, we don't have any information because the government is not sharing information with us. And we come back to the issue of what am I supposed to share with you that will satisfy you? There's nothing, there's one side of the one side of the coin or one side of the divide would say, there's nothing I can tell you that would satisfy your mind that I'm looking at, I'm in your interest because politics is in the mix. There's the other side that no matter what they say, they will still support the administration. And there's the middle who's asking for narrative. But the persons on the middle, when you give those persons information in the middle, are they making best judgments or are they still saying, listen, I am going to take it on this side or that side?
I already showed last week, I think it was Thursday. Or no, it might have been Friday with the video where, you know, well, I can't remember what it was, but essentially it was an entertainment video with a lot of made up stuff.
Yes.
And it was an example of to warn people, hey, listen, be careful what you, because even if it is something that is purported to be the truth, a lot of it is speculation and opinion. And unless I understand, unless you have been following international events and reading military history and military specs and a whole host of other things, international politics and relations and stuff like that, you're not necessarily going to be able to discern the Johnny-come-latelys who just spouting nonsense
that is why
on the internet.
That is why you need to have a bit of, or some degree of hands-on or direct experience in certain areas, such as national security. I'm not saying I'm an expert in all the national security elements. I have in one specific element.
There's a certain...
So you have an understanding of what takes place.
There's a certain tone and language, right? And the thing is, like, for someone like me, it's not that, oh, I know everything, so I know the truth from the untruth. No, I know enough to then know what type of source I will trust over other sources. And what type of language makes more sense to me than people, you know, who seemingly are just kind of talking out to their you-know-what.
And so you have to be very, very careful. And, you know, doubles is our #1 food, right?
It is?
Yes.
Okay.
In Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay.
Good. Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, now Trinidad and Tobago.
No, Trinidad
like 20 years ago, definitely on Tobago.
However, when you go to eat doubles, you just can't ask for every sauce, right? It all depends on...
I kind of do.
Yeah, but it all depends on your preferences.
Well, okay, yeah.
So when you look at certain, and I just want to bring it from a comical perspective to the reality. When you go on social media, persons choose certain sources to their preference and taste because they believe that particular source, and no pun intended for any social media, no pun intended to any social media blogger. I'm just talking about
right.
Yes, so I don't want to get us in trouble, right? But it simply shows that you have a preference on where you take your source of information from. I use that word now, source of information from. And whenever you take it from that particular source, right, you tend to believe whatever that person put out. So nobody else can speak ill of that individual.
That's one thing. Regardless of if I trust the source or not, I don't automatically believe what they say.
And sometimes when you read information on post and from some reliable source, even reliable sources within Trinidad and Tobago, don't give you full information.
Yeah.
Right? They give you just enough. And then you question the reliability of that source and the veracity of the information at the same time what you're getting from the reliable source.
And one of the things is, one of the sources that I at times use, right? Because I don't necessarily want to look up all of these things all the time. But, because, you know, war is not a pleasant thing to talk about.
It's true.
One of the things that he advocates for is a service that literally will look at various news stories. And it will basically say, hey, this news story has widespread views from outlets on left-wing politics and right-wing politics, whereas this one is only really getting engagement from left-wing politics, and that one is only getting engagement from right-wing politics. And the idea is it kind of shows you, hey, what are the two sides saying and thinking on an issue, so you are better informed on their perspectives, as opposed to assuming, well, this person is saying the truth. No, they're giving their biased opinion on the matter, which is one of the issues in this situation. I think there's a lot of biased opinions on the matter, and half the time, even when I am actually being non-committal on the issue, people are assuming that what I'm saying, I agree with David Abdul on some things, I might disagree with him on other things. I agree with the Prime Minister on some things, I'll disagree with her on other things. I agree that U.S. intervention in Venezuela has a lot of dangers and risks, and it's not something that should be automatically considered. So, but at the same time, the situation might warrant it, or it might be one of the few things that can solve the problem. The question is, will it be implemented to solve the problem? People kind of see that, oh, well, so you say we should go ahead. I'm saying, no, I'm saying that this might be the only thing that might solve it, but if they go in and it's done poorly, then we might end up with it exploding in our face anyway, so it might be better to not go in at all.
So in that context, you are much more balanced or objective in how you view information coming together, right?
I will say this though, I very much disagree that the people of Venezuela could deal with a military dictatorship on their own. So on some level, on principle, because in my mind they're suffering, I wish it would be so simple that America go in and clean it up and it'd be easy.
And
I wish it would be that easy.
The reality of who's saying that they are not suffering shows the amount it is reflective in the number of Venezuelans that have fled the country, who are in Trinidad and Tobago right now, and the number of them who may end up be back in Trinidad and Tobago, coming to Trinidad and Tobago.
I think I've only heard an international organization say the Venezuelans living in Venezuela who might be against Maduro don't want intervention, but I think it's because they're worried about their own physical safety.
And the challenge they're going to face.
I've yet to hear Venezuelans not in Venezuela, right, saying, hey, we don't want America. What they say is, we don't want America to go in, we just want Maduro gone more. So we're willing to put up with it, we're willing to accept
that. That is why, that is the how, and I'm speaking from how Trinidad and Tobago citizens operate over the years. We want action, but we don't want it to happen this way.
Yeah.
We want we want drivers on the road to not drink and drive.
We want the police to be more, take the gloves off against the criminals. Oh, why you shoot them for?
Forget the shooting. They don't want the enforcement of certain
wait. Lock up all the drunk drivers except me when I'm drunk on Christmas.
Yeah, have a little understanding of X, Y, and Z. So you can't be asking, you can't be asking for one and not. The thing about the question is that we had issues with the number of Venezuelans coming in Trinidad and Tobago. We had issues with the number of narcotics coming in Trinidad and Tobago. We have issues with the number of firearm and ammunition coming in, contraband coming in Trinidad and Tobago. The outcry was, we need to secure our borders.
Now, okay, we have to now cut to the situation of the base, right? Because apparently there's an issue with the base. Now, I'll start off with this, right? The Prime Minister was apparently questioned. First of all, it's interesting, the drone photograph. It has to be so far away from the runway, you could barely make out what is the alleged U.S. base next to the Crown Point runway. And the Prime Minister, I believe, tried to clarify the situation, saying the picture is self-explanatory. There's a radar with the support officers to operate it, right? Now, she says support officers, but the description in the report, in the news report, says utility vehicles, a small tent, another temporary structure for operational shelter purposes, portable toilets were also observed on the site. So she says support officers, right? It's not a base, it's a support office. And I'm like, no, even that to me makes it seem more than it actually is. It's probably, as was described, some portable toilets, right? And some tents. So to say that they're offices as though, and they brought all kind of container trailers with air condition and all of these, no, they set up some tents. Why? Because there's a radar, and unless you want them to take over our air traffic control, and which is more complex to wire in their radar into our systems, they just put some tents next to the thing so that they could use the thing.
No.
And that is not a bit, I don't even think there's a flag.
So whether
Because I believe every US base has to have a flag.
Whether or not it's a base or not, if it conforms to the true definition of what a military base operates, it's a base.
What?
Hold on. Hear what I'm saying. Listen to me. Understand this. It's a base.
No, you see, my problem with that is...
However, what I'm saying is that my understanding of a base will be different from your understanding of a base. Because of my experience, I knows what a base would bring to the... what a base signifies and what you need for a base. Do we have army bases in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, but... Yes.
Here's the narrative. What does the army base bring? It's for personnel, support, equipment, logistical, for logistics, for deployment, back and forth, right? That structure does the same. It does the same thing. But in the context of what we are trying to bring it out to be, in the context of what we're saying, the terminology from a operational perspective, from an operational base, what a true base operates like, it is not in that context.
Thank you.
So that is what I'm saying. So for the lay individual, Sean,
yes,
not you and I who have some more understanding of what it is. For the public out there, it is not considered to be a military base as per the definition of military base. But there is a lot of political narrative and that you need to put into it for the public to say is a base we have it, because the narrative is that the United States has a base in Trinidad and Tobago, right? In Tobago, right? But it is not. It's equipped. It is some tents erected for logistical support because they have a purpose across there. I don't expect these military personnel to be given a hotel to stay. Let's say they were given a hotel. What we would say now, that the hotel has now been converted into a what?
Into a base.
So here we're going again, right?
Because the thing is, it's like, so when the police put down a mobile command post, is that a police station? Like, on some level, the issue is on a technicality scale doesn't always be the determining factor of what is or what isn't, right? So on a small scale, yes, it may have all of the functions of a base. The reality is, it's a radar that you could deploy it in the field, and if necessarily, they will sleep under the stars and whatnot. But because they are technically not in an active war zone, hopefully ever, they decided maybe it might be a good idea to put some tents so they're just, I don't know, not in the sun all the time.
Obviously.
Like, that's basically what it is. That's why I said to call it offices, to make it sound like, well, it's a desktop like what you would use in your office, and they have desks like how you would have desks in your office and office chairs. I would imagine that's not the case now. I could be wrong. Huh? They have some complex tents when they're ready. But regardless, when you say it's a base, then people think, ooh, now America has like a foothold in our country, and from this foothold, who knows what they could do? It's like, have you seen the size of it?
See, that is the intent, that is the intention or the direction or the perspective of the narrative that was being put out there. It is all about keeping the narrative of the United States has a base in Trinidad and Tobago and we're giving up our sovereign right, right? I am hearing that, and I'm still trying to figure out if that is the case, we give up a sovereign right. I should be happy because if I'm giving up my sovereign right, I would go Monday morning by the US. I would go Monday morning by the US embassy and say, listen a minute, I want to be a US citizen right now.
So we have stand your ground laws, right?
Yes.
So I guess somehow the sanctity of the castle of my home will be given up if I, have an issue and call the police to come into my house. I get it. America is technically not real police, except, hold on, when you have an issue, who are you going to call?
And they do in fact ask how much time they called for Scotland, the British police, UK police to come to Trinidad and Tobago to assist, as well as other foreign police officers to come and assist in Trinidad and Tobago to assist us in crime. What they're doing, not the same thing they're doing? They're just doing it on their own perspective in terms of on the sea.
Now, part of the question is, one of the issues with this is it because the narrative is, one of the narratives is it's disrespectful to Tobagonians, because the Chief Secretary said if it was up to him, he wouldn't have allowed this to happen. He would not have allowed the United States to have access to Tobago airports. My issue is this, and again, maybe if we settle the definition of autonomy, this might have a little more significance to make these statements now. But as far as I'm aware, the airport is a national asset. Tobago is still part of Trinidad and Tobago. If you want independence, then that's a whole separate conversation.
Separate conversation.
Right? And I get it. Independence of a minor subsection of a nation is a tricky ethical situation because you kind of depend on the wider legislature to draft legislation to allow for that, and there's no example that I could think of.
It's easier
right?
it's easy to criticize and say what you will do
if
you were in a position, but you're not in a position, because believe you, the situation that we all are putting forward here, I don't want, and I continue to say, I really don't want to be in the position of the Prime Minister when it comes to the situation that we are in right now. There is no, I don't think there's a good decision, sorry, not a good decision, there's a best outcome for us right now on both sides, you know. Right? It's about the best decision in this circumstance. Because, as you said, we are in unprecedented times. The decisions that are being made, they're made now. There is no rule book or rule book
because
for making them.
My issue is, okay, because the Prime Minister said, and maybe this was harsh, he is entitled to his opinion. I'm not of that opinion, right? I don't know what tone she had when she said that. What Foley does not have his way, does he? He's entitled to his opinion. The thing is, because my issue with what was reported, so maybe there was more to it that was not reported. What is the justification of saying no, right? Because head of the Tobago PNM Council, Ansel Dennis, has also said that the Prime Minister's response showed contempt for the office of the Chief Secretary, right? It's disrespectful. But in the sense of, did she dismiss valid concerns out of hand? Because I technically did not hear valid concerns. You have to say, having this radar leads to this threat. Not that, well, it can be a threat. You know what? If I do a rain dance, it can rain right after. Doesn't actually mean that me doing a rain dance has anything to do with, because the thing is, people will say, if Venezuela goes off the rails, they're going to point to your radar and say, you see, but it's like, hey, we had those fears from before. But more importantly, you can't do these pie in the sky things of, what if, I mean, you know, a meteorite could fall from the sky and hit Trinidad and blow us up, or give us some unique space metal that might enrich us. You know, we could get vibranium. I don't know.
That might be the UNC problem.
Right? So that, yeah, that might be, right? Yeah. But so when you want to criticize the situation, you have to say why. It's the same thing with the zone of peace. If you want to say, well, it's a zone of peace, you have to have a follow-up. You can't just give us the shallow version of, well, it's a zone of peace. Okay. You going to enforce it? No. Or the Prime Minister's at fault. Okay. She have control over the Americans?
What constitutes the zone of peace? What have we been doing to say that we are in a zone of peace? Because I'm still trying to figure out, what is the zone of peace? Do we have we heard about piracy in the Southern Caribbean? I don't know.
Well, there's smuggling, there's human trafficking, and at times, according to the fishermen, there's piracy. So
then what are we saying is it acceptable from one to some degree?
Now, the opposition leaders call the Prime Minister as being dictatorial, right? Instead of addressing the matter directly, the Prime Minister attacked the PNM and described public concerns as nonsense. But I will say this, what are the concerns?
So
that's my issue.
Yeah,
like I understand the common citizen saying, well, what if Venezuela attacks us? That is not a specific concern. That is just a fear. What are the concerns? Because you cannot make decisions on fears. Because then the Prime Minister can say, well, what if the world economy collapses tomorrow? Maybe I should do nothing. You need something more specific than that. And that's a lot of the issues I have with this. The whole conversation is so limited.
Hypothetical.
And hypothetical.
Everything is hypothetical.
And there's not necessarily evidence to say, because again, listen, I am thinking now on, yes, hypothetical, but now when you go to regime change, at least with regime change, you could look at past examples, where it worked, where it didn't work. When it didn't work, what was the fallout? Do you think that the current situation, it could work? Why it can't work? Right?
And the thing about it is that
those are definite things that we could discuss.
Like I said, we are in a crisis situation.
But I just want to say hypothetical, but notice there's no actual details in the hypothetical.
So
it is literally just an open-ended fear.
Exactly. So when you're in a crisis management, when you're in a crisis situation, you have contingency plans put in place. But you're not going to roll out your contingency plans unless the situation presents one of the contingency to put in place. But you will have your plans. I'm not going to give you out my contingency plans. It will be put in place. It is waiting to be rolled out. That contingency plan is dependent on the situation and where the situation, how the situation has evolved for this contingency plan to be implemented. So our situation right now is unprecedented because we have to see how it is rolling out. Yes, there are contingencies, but I cannot be there. If I give you contingency plans for everything that I'm putting out, what does that mean? It means that I am looking at, I can't look at every single scenario and say I will develop a plan for that. My plan is supposed to be able to take in consideration some multiple scenarios because I cannot plan for every single eventuality. Things are also interrelated with each other. One contingency plan may be able to address other issues that you work with. So I just say, what am I supposed to be presenting? What am I supposed to be telling you all? I have a plan. So you want me to come, so you expect me to come and say, listen, if A happened, I go do B, C, D. If B happened, I'm going to do E, F, G. So then you're going to hold me. You're going to hold me to A. So you sit down waiting for A to happen. And if I don't do what I said I'm going to do, you're saying I'm deviating from the plan. But A has to coincide with whatever it is, whatever the plan is going to be. And this is the problem we have here.
Which is funny because when situations like that do occur and decision makers are inflexible, hindsight will say, well, why were you so inflexible? Didn't you see the information said to pivot from the initial plan to one of the contingency plans?
So, as the judge indicated, you don't make those type of decisions right now. Things are very fluid with this situation.
So let's go back to something that we said before, because now this is a third instance. The airstrikes are technically a separate legal issue to regime change, which is a separate legal issue to our sovereignty and the presence of a U.S. base and the use of our airports. Those are technically not the same issues.
Those are three separate entities.
The overall situation, they all converge and are part of the overall situation. But when it comes to debating the merits of any issue, the merits of each issue is potentially different, because this is one area that I might at least partially, if not totally, agree with the opposition leader, probably partially. She said, every TNT Prime Minister before has accepted the duty of upholding international law and strengthening CARICOM solidarity. All right, fine. Which strengthening CARICOM solidarity is, again, technically not just limited to this. That is a whole other issue itself. But hold on. Our nation cannot be well represented by a prime minister who demonstrates public disdain for international law, the UN Charter, and the concerns of the population. Now, the main part is, to me, the disdain for international law is a very not good way to bring up the pertinent issue of the airstrikes again. Because again, just like how we said, we can't say that they're legal. Just like how we don't want people to jump to conclusion, but we can't say that they're legal. And they look bad. And I understand that. And they're concerning, right? But that is not the same issue as the radar.
However, has any of our prime ministers in Trinidad and Tobago in the past had to face a situation that we are currently in?
Partially, yes. Because this situation, and this is one of the things that the PNM needs to understand better and do a better job, which is why, listen, part of the thing of what the opposition leader is basically saying is, hey, you're getting on too much. And I understand that. Again, the rhetoric, kill them all, that was unnecessary.
Yes.
Saying we want international help to deal with transnational drug smuggling, I wouldn't say that's unnecessary.
No,
I was asking for that long before, right? So, the situation now with the opposition that they need to understand is they themselves are taking the rhetoric too far. And by doing so, it makes it seem as though, hey, we are completely innocent in this situation, when the reality is, in the last 10 years, which includes the pandemic years, when the border was supposedly theoretically closed because our nationals couldn't come home, was the border secure? The answer was no. Was the Venezuelan regime of Nicolas Maduro to some degree getting some level of support, right, from our government? You want to talk about the Prime Minister giving support to the United States? What about our government at the then time under the PNM administration of Dr. Heath Rowley giving support to the government of Venezuela? Let's not forget, it seems as though the PNM is more aligned with the Democrats and the Republicans. That's fine. Didn't the Democrats say that Venezuela needed free and fair elections last year? And didn't the Democrats say, the Biden administration say, well, them elections weren't free and fair? Does anyone think that Joe Biden, then President of the United States, would have come out and said, oh yeah, those elections were fine, nothing to see here? Does anyone think that? So, dare I ask, the flip side is, because you want to be direct, and you want to be sensational, and you want to have clickbait things, and you want to deride the Prime Minister as much as possible. And she has things that I disagree with. But instead of having a measured response with a responsible level of speech, you're coming out guns blazing yourself in similar manner as much as you can. And more importantly, how do you deconflict your current position to the fact that on some level, this is a situation that the UNC met. Now, whether the partnership had a part to play with its origin, we could debate that. But we do know that for 10 years, we know who was in charge. And at the end of the day, if it is right for us to ask the Prime Minister, are you aligning yourself with the American government too far? I think it's only fair to then ask in retrospect, did we align ourselves to a military dictator that threatened the CARICOM neighbor too much?
Where was our stance?
Because I also pointed out, not just CARICOM, I also pointed out to us on some level, it's like, hey, we need to understand, if Venezuela could threaten Guyana, they could threaten us. So it's in our best interest to stand with Guyana.
It actually happened, because it was being said that, hey,
I have heard it was a mistranslation, but I can't confirm that. So it's one of those things where I'm still willing to believe that that minister, Venezuelan minister, said that, because it's in line with what he said in the past, right? So, but I have heard it's a mistranslation, so I'm not entirely sure.
Well,
however, the correct translation could also be a mistranslation. It's one of those things where I am open to stand correction, but I'm not going to let it derail the conversation.
The sad reality is that we didn't get up yesterday. We didn't get up yesterday or this morning, and the UNC made this position, right?
Mm-hmm.
The PNM didn't just get up this morning and say it happened. You all were in administration. You all knew from the background what was transpiring and how the situation was evolving. You choose to take a particular position by saying that you are a neutral. That is your choice of position. There was a change in the perspective of how the United States was dealing with the situation. Our Prime Minister and this administration took a decision on a different perspective. Another side, they chose how they want to treat with it. Not because they dealt with it, where I could come out and say that they're doing it absolutely wrong. There's merit in how they're treating with somebody in some of these situations. Is it that I have to do exactly what you said I'm supposed to do and take the position that you're supposed to do?
We have San Fernando waiting on the line. San Fernando, good morning, on here.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Mr. Ali.
Morning, sir.
I want to speak specifically to your discussion that you all had with respect to CARICOM and the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I was taken aback to listen to both of you talk about that. Let me put it this way: that you all reduce CARICOM just to trade. I would implore both of you to go and read the revised Treaty of Chagaramas to understand CARICOM and delve into CARICOM and see all the organizations that function under CARICOM that makes this region the region it is, that a united nation more than a divided nation. Please do that. Have a good day and Merry Christmas.
Before you go, just a minute. We never said we reduce it to trade. We use trade as an example. I also spoke about education. I talk about visiting our CARICOM countries, and we talk about security. We didn't go through the whole context about it.
But let me say this. When you talked about visiting other countries, you were being critical of CARICOM in that statement. Let me be very specific. You were being critical.
Okay.
Fair enough. As I said, I would implore both of you to go and read the revised Treaty of Chagaramas from 1973 and all the organizations that function under CARICOM that you all seem not to have a grasp for and understand CARICOM. This region is more united than divided. Regardless of the rhetoric that the Prime Minister has been spewing, or what Gaston Brown says, this is a united community. You all have no idea how united this community is. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. Unfortunately, I have a more cynical view because, you can look at all of the good work the UN does. And at the end of the day, none of that has any bearing whatsoever on the international agendas that plays out in the UN. Regardless of how many great, because a lot of the UN workers are seemingly apolitical, at least at times. And the amount of work they do across the globe is very important.
See,
but as a political entity, the UN is not a united creature.
I understand what Mr. San Fernando is indicating. Yes, the documentation is there, what his intention is, all the organization that works towards it. But at this current situation, what is the perspective behind it? What is the view of many? You have to listen to the view of many, the view of how persons are viewing it, how they are viewing how CARICOM operates. Many persons may not have information. Just like I say, you don't make judgments. So I agree with what he's saying, that we narrow it down But when you're concentrating on certain aspects of it, taking that whole thing together, then we could simply say again that is CARICOM functioning as how it was intended to?
Listen, to some extent, I am narrowing it down to the politics.
It's politics.
Because whether it's the UN or the EU, regardless of all of the various, organizations that work under their umbrellas, the politics is very ugly because the individual agendas diverge, right? You see it in the EU. I mean, the EU, and if we had a CARICOM parliament, I wonder if it would be as comical as the EU Parliament at times, where you have large sections of the EU Parliament decrying the EU in the EU. They are voted into the EU Parliament on the platform of the EU is bad, and I am here just to criticize the very institution I have been voted to represent my country for, right? Because at the end of the day, CARICOM, to say that CARICOM unites the Caribbean, it should be doing more. Economically speaking, CARICOM can benefit us in the sense of it can be a overall domestic market that provides us with a larger domestic market to be the foundation for our industries, to be the foundation and justification of, well, all right, we have a cancer center in this country, and then we have some other medical center in that country, and then we have this science testing facility in this country, and so forth, right? Because a lot of things, even Trinidad, Tobago, and Jamaica, you can't have all the specialties and all of the various functions. There's a reason why there are certain specialized hospitals that people in America travel across their country, which is almost as big, if not bigger, than the Caribbean region, right? So CARICOM, obviously it's not going to be as big as America, but it provides our domestic industries a potential larger regional market to kind of take the place of a domestic market to give us a better foundation to try to begin to do things at scale to compete internationally. However, I'm not really seeing either specialization or unification in order to get economies of scale. I'm not seeing that. Also, as Ashraf pointed out, not seeing any sort of security initiatives beyond the Mickey Mouse Convention where, oh my gosh, crime is a public health hazard. That's nice. What came out of that? Absolutely nothing. It was a dog and pony show and a lot of money was spent for no reason, right? And that's what, so when Gaston Brown says, oh, we support TNT on crime, Ashraf has a point. On a practical level, no you didn't, because you did nothing. In part because, we'll be frank, most Caribbean islands could barely do anything, right? We could barely do anything, and our police force and regiment and Coast Guard outnumbers theirs in terms of manpower, capital spent, recurring expenditure, etc., on several magnitudes, and we could barely do anything. So I get it. I'm just saying, when you get to the international politics of the thing, that stuff kind of doesn't matter because the various national leaders, they don't care. They're not going to withhold their agendas because of those programs. And the Prime Minister is one of those. The Prime Minister is one of those. She has her own agenda, right? CARICOM would have had a stronger position if they actually had a stronger position on the Guyana Essequibo situation, regardless on the legality of it or not. If they defended Guyana stronger, and if they didn't suck up to Venezuela as much as some of those nations did, in both that situation and this situation, then CARICOM unity would have had a stronger case. When the Prime Minister says that CARICOM is fractured, I was questioning that even before she said it on the PNM. I assume San Fernando's back. Yes, we'll take the call.
Sean, Sean, your utterances just now tells me that you have no understanding how this thing is how it actually is working. You talk about medical. Let me just give you an instance, right? Do you know a lot of the Caribbean islands in the Eastern Caribbean have arrangements through insurance with medical facilities in Trinidad and Tobago for their citizens to come to Trinidad and Tobago for specialties?
That's not what I'm talking about.
And no. I'm saying that. Hold on. You talk about. Wait. Let me finish, please. You talk about the security, right? The regional security system. Do you understand how it works? You don't, and you should. And CARICOM would make an interesting. CARICOM would make. Let me say this first. CARICOM would make an interesting.
But you're not debating the point. The point you're saying there are regional security systems, but the point is, what has CARICOM done to help us, regardless of what exists?
Say you don't know, but don't question something that you don't know.
Caller, you have to. You cannot counter me by not countering me. You are not countering my point.
You know what you want? You want an argument. And
caller, if you disagree with me, you cannot tell me that you disagree with me because I don't know something that you know, but you're not going to tell me what it is. That's not how a debate works. You are not, caller, you're not making a point.
Start with the revised treaty of Sagaramas.
I asked a question. Forget the treaty. Caller, forget the treaty. Caller, no, I asked a question. What has CARICOM done? It is a simple, straightforward question that is waiting for. Listen, if there's a thing that could be pointed to besides the conference, because that was meaningless, that you could point to, fine, but you're not pointing to anything. There are many treaties that fall up on the wayside. Treaties are not.
I said to you do you understand how the regional security system works? And you don't. And the fact that you're trying to lure me into an argument, and you do not if you understood how the system works, you would not ask that question because you don't know.
Caller. So all right. So the caller. So then, how is it that you could debate the point by just saying, well, you don't know?
There is no debate. I am not calling
right, but then you're not, caller.
I am telling you.
You're not making a point.
I am telling you.
You're not making a point.
Your basic understanding of CARICOM
you're not making a point.
Should not be involved in a discussion.
You're not making a point, caller. I can't even say to the other viewers where you are right or wrong on your point because you're not making a point.
I don't want you to say that to the viewers, Sean. I am merely saying
so
to you.
I have nothing to agree with you. I have nothing to agree or disagree with you on because you're not making a point. I asked a very straightforward question. I asked a very straightforward question. I asked a very straightforward question. No, you were making a point. The point has nothing to do with the conversation. The point was, what has CARICOM done? Yes, there might be a regional security treaty in place or apparatus or whatever. So what? We have a whole defense force and a coast guard. So just because it exists doesn't mean it works. We have a whole coast guard with 12 vessels.
Take it down. You're getting upset.
I'm getting upset because you are engaging me without making a point.
I don't have to make. I have.
Well, then why are you? No, you can't.
You need to educate yourself on how CARICOM operates.
No, I don't.
In the region.
No, actually, no, I don't. In this case, I don't.
On it because you're trying.
No. I don't need to know how the Coast Guard operates to ask the question why the borders are open. But caller, it is on principle the same thing. It is a regional, it is a security example. I do not know the procedures of how they launch boats. I do not know the timetable or the schedule of when they go out to patrols. I don't need to know. I see the results and I ask the question based on the results. We all do. So why can't I ask a question based on the lack of results? Where is the regional security cooperation that matters for our national security concerns? Because in the context of this situation...
there is one. Yeah,
okay, so say it. Can you say it?
No.
Why?
Sean, you seem not to understand how regional security operates, okay? If you did, you would not be making these basic arguments that you're making, okay? You need to understand CARICOM is a much bigger thing than you're trying to make it out to be. Because of your lack of understanding of how CARICOM works, the organizations of CARICOM, and how they keep this region together more than divide this region. And if you don't understand that, go and find out. That is all I am saying to both of you. Go and find out. Have a good day.
Thank you, Cole. All right. Yes, I understand there is a whole host of intelligence and information sharing and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. But I don't see a point. I don't care about what CARICOM is supposed to do. I am literally just asking what, and I understand this is the panel that says, hey, you can't get everything revealed to you. But if it is something that you're saying I'm supposed to know, why can't you say it? What, I mean, you want to point to the drug hauls that were confiscated throughout the region? One, has any of them ever been done without help of the Americans? And two, with regards to drug interdiction, we barely scratch the surface. With regards to drug smuggling interdiction, we barely scratch the surface. With regards to preventing criminals from moving between islands, we probably barely scratch the surface. So tell me, where is CARICOM a success when it comes to security concerns? Let's not, one of the things that I find interesting is you haven't necessarily considered the fact that one of the people sitting next to me is someone that used to work in the TTPS, so he would have some awareness of regional security, I would imagine. So I will ask you.
That is why I understand what San Fernando is going, but that conversation I would not get involved in because that level of regional security, I'm fully aware of what the regional security apparatus is. By he saying I do not know, and I'm not mentioning it, I would not mention that because there are certain aspects of the regional security that we're talking about. CARICOM through the other organizations, and I'm not calling the names of those organizations, right? Because it's not a discussion about CARICOM. Have other organizations that deals with international Caribbean security training and integrated approach to certain things. That is not our conversation, and I would not go down that road with that because that is for a different type of conversation that I would not go there with, right? We are actually speaking about specifically when it comes to the perspective of how, and I'm saying, that's how I'm saying, we are speaking specifically to the perspective of how the public views and the messaging out right here, right now, and the conversation in Trinidad and Tobago, whether or not CARICOM.
The politics behind it.
Politics behind it. Not many persons in Trinidad and Tobago would know about the projects that CARICOM, the whole CARICOM body does, the regional security apparatus, and what they do. Because they are not seeing the benefits of it, and nobody understands the benefit of it.
I'm not saying there are no benefits, but what I am saying is, right, just like how we have a growing crime problem here, a lot of the members of CARICOM had a growing gun violence problem there. And also, back to the politics, where was the political decisions to say, oh, Trinidad, you want to engage with the Americans, here is CARICOM's alternative? There was none.
So there are integrated approaches in terms of security and border security and maritime security.
You know what,
but you're not seeing
it
is not physical.
Right.
It is not physically seen.
It's not just that. We have integrated approaches to national security in this country. We have integrated approaches to national security between the Defense Force, and which is the regiment, and the Coast Guard, and the TTPS, and the Prison Service. Do we see anything?
And this is
I'm sure they have things on the books.
And that is why it is difficult. It is difficult to look at something and the practicality of what we are seeing right now.
Why you don't want to say it is, don't always want to reveal all of how the sausage is made. That's point number one, right? And that's one of the reasons why I don't care to know the specific details of how these things works. In part, it includes things that I'm not supposed to know. What I care about is results. I don't care to know how the Coast Guard is supposed to be doing their job and what their procedures are, because if I know, the criminals know. But it goes back to results-based analysis, because once you get at this level, participation trophies don't matter. So, I'm sorry. Your point was not pertinent to the discussion. It is what it is. If you disagree, that is fine. I understand why, you're free to disagree. I'm not going to hold it against you. But I'm not seeing the results. That's why I asked for the results. Because it wasn't just our murder rate going up. It was Barbados, and I think some of the other small islands. Jamaica's murder rate might not be going up, but it's more or less right up there with us, I think, in the top 10 per capita when we were high, right? And a lot of the other small islands were basically getting concerned that they would say, when they were like, oh, we have 60 murders, oh my gosh, records are being broken in our countries, right? CARICOM was working so well then. And also, we were talking about the zone of peace. What is the CARICOM security apparatus to deal with the instability of Venezuela and how that impacts with the rest of the region? Because I haven't seen it. So I would like to know if there is a thing that was working, because that's how you counter the argument of, well, we need the Americans. The counter to the argument is not that, well, CARICOM has systems in place. By all accounts, it doesn't seem to be working, or at least not working well enough. In order to counter a specific question, you have to have a specific answer.
And the thing about it is that these agencies are not frontal agencies, or these...
They're like Interpol?
Similar to that. They provide certain type, they provide information or kind of thing. So we are talking about physical... We're talking physical.
I was not talking about Interpol.
No,
that's not enough.
Yeah, we're talking about on the ground and what persons could actually see and judge. That is the challenge. That is what we're facing right now. What persons are actually judging on the ground. They may not be fully aware of all the other background information. But for now, what they are saying, what the messages are on the ground, what the narrative is, that is a reality we face.
To me, it's not just about the narrative, it's about the results.
So
organizations by treaty have limited powers to do anything. So then it comes around when we send troops to help Haiti get a national disaster. Like on some level, that's what it took, because at the end of the day, a treaty to investigate things on the back end is not stopping the smuggling on the front end. Sure. And we haven't actually gotten the results on the investigation on the back end either.
We're on the brink of Christmas. So before I miss it, and before you close off, I want to say to all the viewers out there, and all the callers, all the commentators, your comments are valid. I want to say to enjoy the Christmas, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. We may have another show coming up at some point at next year, right? And
we have shows next week.
We have, we'll be there.
But it'll be after Christmas.
We'll be after Christmas. So enjoy the Christmas season, enjoy the festive period. Do not drink even too much. Drink with moderation. Driving under the influence is still an offense, but notwithstanding that, you may not be the one that driving under the influence, someone else, and you may become a victim of road rage or road violence and some inconsiderate driving. So with all of this taking place, let us be considerate for each other. Understand that the environment is still politically charged, and we have a lot of questions whether or not where we are going in 2026. We hope it's a better place, all right? But at the end of the day, we must always agree to disagree. We could have different perspectives, but that doesn't mean we can't still be professionally sound with each other.
I do have to say this quick. One, with regards to CARICOM, I was implying greater integration on what we have now. Two, with regards to this being a political thing, one of the things that I find interesting, and I'll close with this, is that the Prime Minister has a very aggressive stance. So she, in part, is responsible for where the narrative is, right? With regards to the zone of peace, with regards to CARICOM and blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, while it is a separate issue with the airstrikes and the justification for them, one of the things that we have not necessarily seen a lot of contemplation on is the impact on drugs being smuggled into the country, the impact on the drug trade and drug sales within this country and up the Caribbean, right? How we got there could be questionable, but we also have to consider the impact, but not just the impact on now the economy, but on the politics. Because one of the things that we have failed as a region is to deal with regional drug lords. So dare I ask, maybe there are those who have an interest or a stake and are potentially speaking on behalf of those interests and stakes that are being negatively impacted by a reduction in drug money. To what extent that is affecting our politics. Because I'm not saying the Prime Minister is a part of that, but I am saying the political bubble is potentially masking that wider issue. And what this, regardless of whether it is right or wrong, gives us an opportunity to potentially deal with a drug syndicate or transnational existence that we otherwise would not have been able to deal with because we lack the resources or the political/societal will to do so in the past. But depending on how affected they are now, it might change the math and the nature of the game. But we're not necessarily hearing anything about that. So then the question is why? Media, politicians, law enforcement. The last one might have a more practical answer. With that said, have a good day. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. So, Ashraf, thanks for joining me once again. Thanks to all the callers, yes, including Mr. San Fernando, the caller. This is Talking About WESN, the content capital. We'll see you tomorrow to close out the year. The good lady will be here. We'll continue some of the conversations. Remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. Stay safe. Be nice. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
WESN.